Welcome to Thrive and Shine HR, a podcast and video series dedicated to helping us overcome the limiting beliefs, self-doubt, and imposter syndrome that so many of us HR professionals face. Here are your hosts with over 45 years experience in HR and certified life coaches, Jen and Catherine. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Thrive and Shine HR. I am laughing at myself on this Sunday morning. It is raining cats and dogs here in Medford, Oregon, and I had thought I swapped the intro with the new intro for Thrive and Shine HR, so I'm just giggling to myself that it's still the older intro, and it's now been, 6, 7, 8 weeks now since Catherine has moved on. So anyway, that is definitely a to-do for next week. So welcome. If this is your first episode, first time ever being a part of Thrive and Shine HR, welcome. And if this is your 51st time being our 51st episode of Thrive and Shine HR, welcome back. Thank you for coming back. I really appreciate you, and this podcast has meant the world to me. And today's episode is no different. I am tremendously excited for the interview that I'm going to be sharing with you here in just a couple moments. But before we get started, I am really excited about a new segment that we're going to be starting next week here on Thrive and Shine HR, and it's called Passion Pulse. And each week I'm going to come on and I'm going to talk about what is lighting my fire right now. I have noticed when I am in community with others, whether it's other women, other professionals, others who, are really excited about their goals. They're excited about the dream that they're working on. I love that, and I want that to be a part of this podcast. I don't want this podcast to always be about, our thoughts and our emotions and all of that. I also want it to be about, what are we doing about it? What are we doing when we become aware of our negative thought patterns? How are we then putting into action? So that's something I'm really excited about starting next episode of Thrive and Shine HR. I think I said next week, which I do want to get back into the weekly cadence once I get that intro fixed. And, once we get into that cadence again, I think Passion Pulse is going to be just a great way for me to share what's going on in my heart. Where is that kind of fire that I'm excited about right now? It could be a book. It could be a class that I'm taking. It could be a podcast that I listen to that I'm like, oh my gosh, I just had a meditation this morning that just lit my fire, that, I think I'll talk about it just as a precursor of what this will look like next time. But the meditation was I'm doing this 21-day meditation challenge with Oprah Winfrey and Deepak Chopra. If you want to learn more about it, let me know. I'd be happy to share with you how I'm doing it and where I'm getting it for free. But anyway, I'm doing this challenge with a group of other women who I'm part of a gratitude group with. So we go on each day. It's part of my recovery program, but we go on each day and we just, list at least a couple things that we're grateful for. And it has been just staggering for my mental health to have that type of community. But being able to kind of share, with them of what's going on, and this meditation right now that is really lit my fire is really talking about how within each and every one of us, there's almost like, if you can kind of imagine around your body, there's a ball of energy. And that ball of energy is fueled by everything that you're putting out in the world. It's your words, it's your actions, it's your thoughts, right? Which then is how it all manifests itself within, your entire existence. And that meditation, I woke up from it, or I kind of came out of that meditation really, really excited for Passion Pulse. It was kind of my idea as I was meditating. I'm like, what is it that I really would love to be able to do at the beginning of each of these episodes that's like, hey, this is what's going on for me, that's got me really excited. And I'd love to hear from you. So in the comments today and in future episodes, what's lighting you up right now? Is there a book? Is there a class? Is there a podcast? Is there some type of activity that you started doing in your life habitually that's, really making a difference in your life that, is worth sharing. So I think, kind of like TED Talks, right? Ideas worth sharing. That's what Passion Pulse is going to be, is ideas worth sharing. So anyway, with that, before we jump into the interview with Penny McNerney, who is going to be my guest today. She is owner and HR consultant at Total Circle HR. So before we jump into that, we are going to quickly take a moment and hear from our sponsor. So, hey everybody, Jen here. I'd like to take a moment to talk about our very first sponsor for Thrive and Shine HR, Thrive 360. Thrive 360 is redefining workplace wellness for modern businesses through a tech-driven platform that delivers custom wellness programs using expert-created content from leading doctors and therapists. The technology tailors mental health and productivity resources to each employee's unique needs, making personalized support more scalable and impactful. With tools to address challenges like burnout and engagement and retention and actionable insights for employers, that's us, everybody. Thrive 360 empowers organizations to build healthier and more resilient teams. For a free demo to check out how it could revolutionize your organization, click the link in the show notes for today's episode. Now, back to the program. Okay, well, with that, I am really excited to share with you my interview with Penny McNerney. She is owner, again, and HR consultant at Total Circle HR. Our conversation around mindset is so good. It's so good because it really gets to the heart of what so many of us struggle with, which is really what goes on in our minds over and over again, that we're not good enough, that we need to have this like mask and not be authentically ourselves, because if we show them our true selves, they're going to reject us. They're going to push us away. They're going to not include us for, whatever reason. And that is really, I think, what causes so many of, so much of our suffering and so many of our problems in our lives. And so I am really excited for us to watch and hear this episode. So let's get to it. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Thrive and Shine HR, the interview. Today I am so grateful and so excited to be talking to Penny McNerney. Is that how you pronounce it? McNerney?
McNerney.
McNerney. Okay. McNerney. I'm gonna get that right. So Penny McNerney, and she is an HR consultant and owner of Total Circle HR. So Penny, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, we're going to have a great conversation with March's theme of Thrive and Shine HR being about mindset. We really wanted to dig into what does it take really to have the mindset to be able to push through our own inner boundaries and obstacles and whatever that might look like, to really be able to come into the life that we really most want, and become the person that we really most want to be. And so, with Thrive and Shine kind of having that mental health and emotional health, kind of focus, I'm so appreciative that you wanted to come and get a little vulnerable and kind of talk through some of this stuff with me. So thank you in advance for what we're about to go through and talk about. But I think it's really valuable, not only for us as we kind of talk these things through. I've found it, it can be almost therapeutic. It's like, oh my gosh, yeah, I was kind of struggling with that. And it's helpful for others, right? It's always so great when others can be like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. That there are others who really kind of have struggled with these same things that kind of get us turning and spinning sometimes.
Absolutely. And HR can be that lonely place. And I think it's really, really important to talk about it and the reasons why.
Yeah. I love that. All right. Well, let's kick it off. And I'd love for you to can you share a little bit about your background and what led you to where you're at today, your role, and just in your life? Tell us a little bit about Penny.
Sure. Well, I have an interesting background because I didn't I stumbled into HR. I never set out to be in HR, and then to
So many of
ultimately,
us.
yeah, I didn't, and then to ultimately own my own company. I sort
Yeah.
of crashed into HR because I started in operations, and I honestly viewed HR as my blocker, my barrier between me and my targets. I had numbers to make, and HR was saying, no, you have to do it this way. And I was like, no, I have numbers to make. But everything changed for me when I really got my first job at Foot Locker. And I was so fortunate to get the role that I was. I started out as a coordinator, and I discovered by having my operational background that it wasn't a liability. It was actually a superpower. But at the time, I was raising two small children. I have two beautiful daughters, and I had to go back to school because out of high school, I didn't go to college. I was like, I am going to work in the big city. That's what I want to do.
Yep.
And then I realized just working in the big city, you needed something behind you. So I went back to school at night, creating chaos in my house, working full time and then studying. But I really did it to show my two daughters that you can conquer anything if you set your mind to it. And it was not a straight path. There were ups and there were downs, but I persevered through. And like I said, my operational background really became my secret weapon, helping me create like much more well-rounded people strategies that actually work in the real world. So my greatest frustration actually became my greatest passion, ultimately leading where I am today, the founder of Total Circle HR.
Nice. I love how sometimes the grit or, just the real kind of stuff that we go through earlier in our career. I always love to hear how it really has helped kind of shape you know, this person, right? And we can look back in retrospect and reflect and like say, wow, right? Like there are some real things here that I helped, kind of hone in based on that experience. So that's really amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely a journey in
Yep.
everybody's life, but it's how you take that journey and where you want it to be.
Heck yeah. I like that. All right, well, that's actually so great as it gets into our second question, right? So, perspective is everything. And we also know perception is reality. And so, when it comes down to, how we can perceive things and how sometimes that can be really hard to shift those perceptions, can you share a time where maybe you had a shift in perspective or perception that really helped change how you approached a challenge in your life or a perceived challenge in your life or career?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think that we all go through a little bit of that imposter syndrome. And as I was coming up in my career, I always had that voice in my head to say, should you be really doing this? Can you really be doing this? And I think, like you said, perception becomes reality. And if you portray that into yourself, you're never going to get out of that loop. But I was never afraid of working hard. What terrified me the most was failing, um, like like a lot of people. But I came to understand that if I was going to break that barrier of perception is reality, then I had to get out of my head and start doing what I knew that I could do. And I've had a lot of failures, but I think if we don't fail, then we never ever we can't succeed. And I always say that my perspective in life completely shifted. One, when I had my first daughter, I wasn't even ready to have my first daughter. But my whole mindset changed on what I wanted to be, what I wanted the world to see me as, and then to propel that forward.
Wow. So was there an additional time other than when your first daughter was born, did you say? And I missed that, or
I think just as I continued to grow up,
kind of build the skills, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and develop the skills, and then having my second daughter, and saying to myself, wow, I'm like responsible for two humans and two females, and what do I want them to see? And I think that just changed my perspective. I know, being in HR, it's not easy, and there's a lot of perceptions out there of what HR is and what HR isn't. And I just think it's so important that anybody that is in HR, they don't let those noises, because they're really just noises, get into their head to block them from doing what their passion actually is.
Yeah. Wow, you are like so good at leading into next questions. So, I mean, that perfectly leads into the next question. So, why do you think so many people, and especially in HR, right? Why do we get stuck in these negative thought loops? And how can we start rewiring our brains for more empowering perspectives?
Yeah, it's a great question, because when you're in HR, think about it, we're constantly absorbing everybody else's problems. Nobody's really coming to us to say, "Hi, how are you? Everything is great." Sometimes they do,
You're
but
doing great, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
we're always kind of like the you know redheaded stepchild kind of.
Exactly, exactly. We handled terminations, employee complaints,
Yeah.
changes, personal crisis. I mean, I think the number one perception is HR is the police, and we're not. So it's really hard to like get out of that mindset, because at the end of the day we're employees also, right? It becomes like this thankless middle ground, that we're trying to balance what the company wants and how to communicate that to the employees. And I always think that we ourselves in HR, and it's really, really hard. We have to set like emotional boundaries and recognize it's not about us.
Mhm.
It's about the company, and we can't take that home with us, which is so hard, because most of us do. And I think it's really important. We always have to celebrate, even the smallest wins. And I mentor so many people, and I say document what you actually are doing, and how you feel, and the value that is to the company. But I think most of all, it is finding an HR community. I would be lost without my HR communities, because we all get what we're all going through, and together we can actually like lift each other up. I was just at a conference yesterday,
Oh boy.
and it's amazing to be in a room with other HR professionals who
Totally.
say, oh my gosh, yes, yes, we get it, yes, and this is
Especially right
how,
now.
yeah, this is how we overcome it.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I mean, especially right now, and there's so much going on, and I think just aligning and making sure, we all know that we're not alone, and every organization is unique, every situation can be, unique, but I agree with that. so wholeheartedly. And it's so interesting because I really resisted it for a long, long time. I had kind of this dark spot in my head about HR, right? Like when I came into HR, I was trained by an individual who had turned dark,
Hmm.
like, and it happens in HR
Yes.
where, so many people who have been in it for a long time, there's like this coldness that can come because of, how difficult it can be to perceive the way that we can be, right? The labeling of the police or, the bad guy and this, and that's hard for so many people to not attach to. And that's really one of the things I've learned is the biggest thing for me is detaching from that identity of thinking that, based on these perceptions and opinions of others, that defines us. And, having the network of, other HR people is really kind of the door in. I think
Yes.
that realization to kind of walk in those doors and be embraced by so many others who are just like, we see you. We see you. And even though, you have to walk into those doors of the organization each and every day and those perceptions are real, right? There's nothing you can do necessarily with the way people are going to choose to see you because at the end of the day, you are the one, if they are going to get fired, you're in the room usually.
It,
Like there is that just it doesn't take that away. So yeah, I went off on a bit of a tangent myself.
that's all right. I mean, how many times have you walked in a room as HR and they go, shh, shh, Jen's here,
Yeah,
Penny's
no,
here.
totally, right?
So it's trying to, in our own mindset, getting past that because we have to believe in ourselves and the value that we bring.
Yeah. Yeah, I am in the process of reading the book Let Them by Mel Robbins. Are you familiar with Mel Robbins?
No, I'm not.
Oh my gosh, you have to check her out. She's Mel. Melanie is, her first name, but she goes by Mel Robbins. And the book, Let Them, is something I was just talking to someone the other day about because they're in HR and they're really struggling. They were going through an investigation. And in that investigation, ultimately the decision that they made kind of didn't make either side happy. Right, like either side felt, like there was something taken away. And so, she was just going on and on about how, no matter what she does, she really feels like she's trying to stay in her integrity, but she continues to have these people see her as like the bad guy. and
Hmm.
and so I responded to her and I said, let him, right? Just let him.
Right.
And it's so hard though. I mean, it literally kind of shook her and kind of surprised her. She's like, what, wait, yeah, I could, and so then she starts going into kind of the justification of why it matters so much, or she feels like it should matter so much. And I said, but why?
Right.
Should it? And, that right there is one of the biggest hacks mindset wise that I think that is, just a breakthrough around how we can get out of our own way is recognizing kind of those stories that we're telling that's really not helping.
Right. And owning it, right? To
Owning
say
it.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I realize you all might think like I'm the bad guy, right? But
Yeah.
what I like to say to people is you don't know what happened before and you don't know what happened after.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you might be in finance and you're doing your job and like this is my role.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So so it's tough though. It's tough through those difficult situations. I mean, this was one of the larger investigations that she had had in that
Mm,
organization, at least since she had been there for a couple years. And so, I mean, that's a hard thing. Like you still have to walk in those doors. You still have to, try to put on a smile and do
hmm.
whatever. And so, yeah, I totally get it. I've totally been there too. And I think it's just a matter of making sure that you're checking in with yourself and then just doing your best to continue to show up with the integrity of who you are.
Right, right.
And that's,
Exactly.
yeah, and that I think is the key. And that even on the hardest days, right? And I think you said something like that just a little bit ago.
Hmm. Yeah, it's just, I always say to everybody, don't change who you are for anyone. And even on the toughest days, like take a step back, right? Take that breath and don't don't internalize if I would have done this different, if this and that. Just know that it's part of the role, and employee investigations are so tough. They're draining, but know at the end of the day that you did your best, and like you said, the perception is going to be there. Try your hardest not to let it bother you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a good lead into this next question because it's really about like fear and self-doubt.
Yes.
And so, they hold so many of us back. And so what are some strategies that you use and that you share with others to challenge those limiting beliefs and other things that keep us held back and move more towards an empowered mindset?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so normal, like when you hear those voices, right? I can't do this. Why would you do this? Why do they think that? And I've had many times in my career. Do you remember the book Penny? The Sky is Falling.
I don't think
And
I've heard of that, but is that a kid's book?
yes. Yeah, it's a little bit, it's a children's book, and I know it because of Penny, but it was like this doomsday, the sky is falling, the sky is falling, and I have to say, early in my career, that was me. I wasn't like this confident person, but I had to take a step back, and I always say that. Like, if anybody that knows me, I always say, take a step back, take a breath, and I had to learn to really trust myself. I'll never forget my first role when I was put in charge and I had to make the decisions. That was probably my most fearful time, but I kept trying to block out that voice of fear and say, like, I was put in this role for a reason, and so don't let that hold you back. Because I really think consciously, like, we limit ourselves, and we are the ones that are holding ourselves back. I think it's really important to get those voices out of our heads and then surround ourselves with people like our champions, like our HR group or our family. And my family wasn't always my champion. They would say, I can't believe you do this for a living. How do you wake up every day? Um, like, you're going around firing people. Like, how could you be happy about that? But I really think it's about taking the time for ourselves, taking that breath, and not letting that voice in our head to be like the sky is falling, but to flip it and to say, I can do this. I'm
Right.
in this role, I'm in this world, and I'm doing this for a reason.
Right. And what's the one next thing I can do?
Right?
And I think that that's where we get stuck, right? It's like the decision overwhelm or analysis paralysis. There's all kinds of things you say it, but I think I've noticed over and over again that's kind of where it's at, right? It's when it becomes overwhelming and it's just so much. Where do I even begin, right? And that's, I think where intention can come into play. It's like, we'll just focus on one thing. Just focus on
Right.
one thing that kind of feels right now and just move. And
Exactly.
then it can start to kind of grow from there once the momentum and the motivation, right? Like, I know I listen to Oprah a lot and she'll talk about, do not wait for your motivation, right? Don't ever wait for you to feel motivated and feel like the energy of like what it is that you're really wanting to try to accomplish. Because if you haven't yet done it, you're there's going to be a lot of resistance. And
Exactly. Exactly.
oh my goodness. Okay. Let me get to my back to my questions. Okay. So, next question is, as a consultant, I know that you do a lot of guiding and helping, organizations and others through tough situations. How do you help leaders and employees see the tough situations, the challenges as opportunities to help grow?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is to listen to what they're saying. In HR, we have a tendency to think like we have to solve everything right away and come up with that answer. And when we do that, we're not actually listening to like the real issue that might be happening. And so when I'm consulting, and I consult with a lot of leaders and employees, I try to understand like what's the underlying issue and what's the goal. What are we looking at? What do you hope to get out of this conversation and or situation? And then I try to share, I always think it's really important to put that human touch, even though we shouldn't touch people, but that human emotion into it, and not be seen as just like this HR person that doesn't have any empathy, and can't understand the situation. So I tend to share my own journey of how I've gotten places and how I've overcome obstacles so that together, because I really think it's about together coming up with that solution. Because if I just come up with a solution and I say, Jen, this is what I think you should do, and you don't believe that that's what you should do, then it doesn't work. But if we come up with the solution together to knock down those challenges or obstacles, then it really becomes a win-win.
I love that. I love that because it's just so hard sometimes when we're in it, when we're in that place to really kind of see that broader perspective. And so how can we be those champions to help kind of guide that towards those win-wins more? And, it's so interesting because I think from an HR consultant's perspective, you have so much of the operational and the tactical that can really get at you into the weeds. And if you're like a data person, that can like really be like a strong area of focus. And then you have this other part that's really about the relational, right? And the relational piece, I think when it comes to consulting is like your that's like, I think that that's where the golden nuggets are going to be, because everything operational and tactical is going to find its way if you can build that bridge to the relational, right? So tell me a little bit about, maybe organizations that you've come into or teams that you've worked with where there's been a disconnect between maybe that operational tactical focus and really the relational piece that's like so needed. This is kind of off topic because it wasn't one of the questions, but I just thought it was so timely. So I'd be curious, like your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting for me from coming from corporate America and then into an HR consulting role. And it's something that you have to build that know, like, and trust with the companies that you're working with because you're not in it every day. But again, I think it's about that human emotion and showing that it's real, that you understand what they're going through, and then again, sitting down with the leaders and sitting down with the team to see what is why aren't we working together, right? Like it's so much easier to work together than against each other. So what is the underlying issue that is stopping us? And from my perspective, again, coming in as that HR consultant, I have to build that trust so that leaders and employees want to speak to me. And to build that trust, I have to be real. I have to be myself. I can't just be like, well, I'm your HR consultant and I'm just going to come in here and I've been tasked to make changes.
Yeah.
Even if I have to build that trust with employees and the leader to implement meaningful change so that we're all working on the same team.
Yeah. Yeah, you can find that alignment, right? And I think that that's so powerful. If you can find an alignment to a greater why,
Mm-hmm.
right? If it's some purpose that's shared amongst
Mm-hmm.
amongst the individuals, now we're talking, because otherwise people are kind of sitting on their islands, like
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
without really having, that sense of shared purpose. So I love
It,
that.
it's it, it's finding like that commonality where like we're all working for the same company. We all want the same thing. Nobody. I used to always say this. Nobody comes into work consciously. At least I hope they don't. To say today is the day I'm going to take down my company or I'm going to fail. Inherently, we all want to do our best, but we
Hmm.
can't do our best if we're not all working together.
Yeah. Amen to that. Well said. All right. Well, we are wrapping up. We've kind of flown through our questions, but we're wrapping up now with our last question. If somebody listening today is feeling stuck in a negative mindset, they're really eh, feeling maybe suffocated or stuck in some way, what do you think could be a great first step in starting to shift their thoughts?
I really think it's important to get out of your own mindset because fear and self doubt hold us back so much. We wake up every day, and that's a blessing, right? We wake up, we face our challenges head on. I think the more that we put those aside, the bigger the challenge gets. And I just think that we need to be our own self champion. Nobody's going to do that. We need to believe in ourselves even when we have the doubts. Get out of our mind, take a step back, take a breath, smile. I smile all the time. People say to me, "You always look so happy." I might not always be happy, but it's easier to smile. You get less wrinkles than frowning, right? Than frowning, and just believe in yourself. You're in a role because you deserve to be there.
I love that. I love that. Well, Penny, I really, really appreciate your time. I appreciate this conversation and the insights that you brought. I feel like yeah, it was enlightening for me. So positive it was enlightening for someone else out there. So before we wrap up, I'd love for you to, again, share a little bit about Total Circle HR, what you do, what you offer, and how you help support others who are out there.
Yeah, so Total Circle HR is my market is small to medium sized businesses that don't have that dedicated HR. They don't necessarily need that dedicated HR, and I become their fractional people partner on a part time basis. And I'm really about helping that small to medium sized business like save time because you can't run your business if you're trying to juggle HR and people because you take your eye off of your business. So I come in and I help you, I like to say, save 30% of your time so that business owners can do what they do best, which is growing and scaling their business.
Nice. Nice. Well, if I was an HR professional listening today who is maybe feeling burned out, maybe not feeling burned out in HR, but has like a dream around maybe becoming an entrepreneur one day, would you be somebody who is open to chatting to people out there who may, want to kind of know how you do it, how you
Oh,
did it?
absolutely. I always say the highs and the lows, and then the step back to say, I actually did this. And if I listen to the voice in my head saying, you can't do this, don't walk away from corporate America, you have a steady paycheck. If I would have listened to that, I wouldn't have Total Circle HR today.
Never be
I,
here.
yeah, I absolutely love to help others.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, then, along with, just sharing the information about Total Sober HR, we'll make sure we have a way for people to reach out to you if they'd like to connect with you.
Great.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Penny. We appreciate the conversation and thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank you. This has been great. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you for joining Thrive and Shine HR today. If you found any of this content useful for you, please take a moment and share it with someone you care about. There are so many others, I believe, that struggle with the same things we struggle with, and the more that we can reach out with what we're learning along our journeys, the more it can help expand others to be able to maybe open their minds to things that they may not have considered before. So thank you again for joining. I hope you can like and subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and please come back again. Thank you. Bye.